They say to listen to what people are saying, to take them at face value, to assess someone by the words they use, the content they share, and how they present themselves. And yet, here is what Nietzsche saw: that words are camouflage. You're taught to hide from the time you learn to speak, to dilute your honesty so that people won't push you away, to smile when you're angry, to lie and say, "I'm fine," when inside you're breaking. Society incentivizes masks, not straight truth. And the warning was basic but cruel. If you mistake someone's persona for the person that they truly are, you will never know who that person really is. Not your friends, not your enemies, not even yourself. Since everybody you meet bears two versions of themselves, the one they show the world and the one they are terrified to make known. Most want to assert that hiding is deception, that deep down, if a person has a mask on, they're being fake. But Nietzsche saw it differently. He thought of masks as armor, not an attempt to deceive you, but to guard the fragile core inside. And now here's where it gets scary. The mask never fails to leak. Every hesitation, every slip of the tongue, every overreaction, they're not random, they're confessions. We're not here to judge what people are wearing on their face. The point is learning to read them. Because once you see the cracks, you start to understand not just who they are, but why they are. This is what Nietzsche's 18 Truths provide. A way to see these invisible patterns beneath human behavior. A guide to deciphering the signs that most people miss. By the end of this journey, you will not only hear people's words, you will hear the silence between the words. Going forward, you won't simply look at their faces, you'll see the shake behind their eyes. And if you're not scared, you might see the truth in you. So let's begin. Imagine a child. Before long, she figures out she gets scolded if she cries too much, so she smiles when she is sad. Yet the smile gradually transforms into her mask. Or a boy. He realizes that they leave him alone when he is brave, so toughness becomes his shield. They think he's confident now, he's big, he's famous, but really he's still that fragile boy, hiding. Nietzsche's first truth is blunt in its simplicity. Everyone is a mask. Not that they're trying to deceive you, but they also had to live at some point. The mask is the story they've told themselves. If I say yes, I'll be loved. If I'm strong, it doesn't mean I'll be hurt. If I can do this, at last, I'll be safe. But masks aren't perfect. They slip. You'll witness it in the hesitant smile, the forced laughter, on the quaver of a voice when a provocative topic arises, in the period of sudden silence when you ask, just a little too much. So it is with reading people. The first rule is, don't take the mask at face value. Seek out the places where it cracks. And that's where the true story starts. And once you start, you can't help noticing. The world is filled with teetering masks, barely holding on. It's too easy to dismiss criticism as objective. Arrogant people aren't even worth it. I hate when others lie. Yet why, Nietzsche asks, does that trait bother you so much? As what you hate is often a reflection of your own shadow. The person who rages against arrogance might actually secretly fear that he's not worthy. The one on a mission to catch liars might be playing hide and seek with their own dishonesty. The person that jokes about being sensitive might be scared of their own vulnerability. This is projection, the mind's way of hiding what it cannot bear inside. If you want to learn the source of a person's unhappiness, don't simply ask why they are unhappy. Ask why they have experienced the opposite of unhappiness, why they have felt the absence of unhappiness. That's where their shadow hides. Nietzsche's point was not to call other people hypocrites, but to hold up a mirror. Hatred is rarely the other person. It's the soul screaming, "This is what I can't accept in myself." So the next time someone goes off on a scathing criticism, just don't portray the words. Ask yourself, what wound is talking here? We're trained to believe communication is speaking. But Nietzsche knew that truth oozes not in what people say, but in what they don't say. Notice the silence. Notice the pauses. Pay attention to the prepared responses, which can sometimes sound over-rehearsed. If someone is dodging a subject, it's not arbitrary, it's fear. When they switch topics fast, they're showing you what they can't confront. When their body goes rigid in that silence, it's not an absence, it's a confession. Consider the last time you've asked a friend, "Is everything okay?" and they replied, "I'm fine." The words said nothing, but the silence that followed, that's where the truth lived. Silence is the shaking of the masks. It's the spot where the soul mistakenly pops through. Nietzsche got it. People deploy words to shield themselves, but silence exposes them. Ever notice how the people who screech the loudest about morality are those with the darkest skeletons in the closet? Nietzsche warned that those who strut their virtue, the constant preacher, the one who can't resist an opportunity to announce how wonderful they are, the impossibly perfect moral warrior. Why? For when virtue is screeching, it ceases to be virtue and becomes theater. True goodness doesn't need applause. It doesn't have to go to great lengths to show its open-handedness. It doesn't have to tell the world how humble it is. When morality is performance, it can be a mask for superiority. You don't have to be good. You have to be perceived as good. The louder the virtue signal, the more abject the insecurity beneath. So when you come upon someone who's constantly advertising their purity, Nietzsche would caution you, be cautious. The performance may be a cover for a desire for power, attention, control. Consider the cliches of daily phrases, "I'm over it," "I don't care," "It doesn't bother me." Most of the time, these aren't lies that are trying to fool you. It's the kind of lie practiced so often that its speaker has come to believe it. This is self-deception, and he didn't see it as evil, he saw it as necessary. Reality is that which is too heavy to carry. To survive, the mind edits, rewrites, and omits. But here's the paradox. These self-lies are where the truth leaks most clearly. Watch for contradictions, for example, or
the person who claims to be independent but hates to be alone. The one who says they do not give a damn about success, but secretly burns with jealousy when others succeed. The one who insists they've moved on, but can't stop talking about the past. These aren't random. They're unconscious confessions. Nobody lies to you first. They lie to themselves. And you simply eavesdrop. Why do people boast? Why is it they that control conversation? They that interrupt, they that dominate? Because superiority is rarely confidence. It's camouflage for insecurity. The person who has to be the smartest person in the room may be terrified of being unheard. The one who always makes a show of being strong may have a hidden terror of weakness. Nietzsche thought of arrogance not as power, but as panic. It's the shivering child hidden behind the throne, the crown that keeps out the terror.
that is why real confidence is silent. It has no need to state its purpose. It doesn't have to throw other people in the way. But false superiority shouts, because that's the only way to drown out the whisper of doubt inside. So next time you come across an inflating jerk, just remember, behind the screen of superiority is almost always the ghost of inferiority. The world feels different already. The smiles are not as genuine. There doesn't seem to be a simple anger, not as cocky that. You begin to feel as though everyone you meet is wearing a mask, and behind every mask is a quivering truth, oozing through in silence, in hyperbole, in performance. Peel back 6 of Nietzsche's truths and this is what you find, that people are not what they seem, and most of the time, that's something they themselves don't even know. But that's just for starters. For if masks expose survival, then shadows reveal fear. And in part 2, Nietzsche takes us deeper, into the fears behind the unconscious, the projections and buried wounds that secretly drive our behavior. So we've learned so far how people wear masks in order to live, but masks are not enough to account for why people are the way they are. Because there's something older, something deeper under every mask, fear. The architect of human behavior is fear. Fear sets the tone of our voice, our decisions, our relations to others, and even the way we regard ourselves. And Nietzsche's second echelon truths suggest that what people show the world is almost never what they really want. It's their defense. They're not pursuing what they desire. They're escaping what they fear. Let's uncover the shadows. Why does one talk too much in a group? Why does another refuse to speak at all, stays mum? Different behaviors, but still, fear is where it starts. The talker fears being invisible. The quiet one is afraid he'll be judged. Consider the person who always says yes, even to their own detriment. They are not so much generous by nature as terrified of being cast off. Or the one who talks about their career non-stop. It's not passion. It's dread of being the one deemed unworthy. Nietzsche's truth, fear lies beneath almost everything human beings do. The irony is that we mistake fear-based behavior for character. We opine, she's just a people-pleaser. He's naturally arrogant. But personality is frequently just fear in costume. Ask not what a person wants. Question what they are afraid to lose. That's the real engine, and once you see it, patterns of behavior begin to seem less like choices and more like survival strategies. Have you ever met someone who makes fun of everyone else? The one who always has comments on how others look, talk, dress, act? On the face of it, it's confidence. But Nietzsche wants to show us that criticism is not infrequently a form of self-confession. Crude humor about someone else's weight. It signifies the speaker's own body shame, the dude who sneers at somebody's job. They are fighting their own feelings of failure. The person who calls someone else weak, that, of course, is often the voice of someone who is terrified of their own fragility. It is projection, that which the ego cannot acknowledge, being rejected and directed away. Nietzsche realized something dangerous. When people pass judgment on you, they're usually telling you something about themselves. Which is to say, pay attention, and criticism is as much about biography as it is judgment. It informs you where someone is injured. It shows you what they're hiding. The nastier their words, the more deeply they confide, personally. We all know the type. The too smooth, too prepared, too composed, almost rehearsed person. At first, it's impressive, but then you see the edges, the defensiveness when challenged, the timbre of their voice when it solidifies that they are right, the way they cave when put under performance pressure. This kind of perfection, Nietzsche cautioned, is more often another name for confidence or guilt in disguise. The over-prepared professional? They may be fleeing from a mistake they can no longer forgive themselves for. The unshakably calm person? But maybe they are simply afraid of losing control, and the one who says they're at peace. Most of the time, they're battling an inner war they don't want you to see. Real confidence doesn't perform. It doesn't panic when questioned. It doesn't have to silence anybody else. Iliism is, of course, often ridiculous or pathetic, but it is a solid base to stand on. False confidence, on the other hand, is made of glass, because it's made of denial, and denial always trembles. I couldn't give a damn what anybody thinks. I never get jealous. I'm always happy. When someone speaks in the tones of an absolute, Nietzsche says, listen closely, for exaggeration is the ego shouting down its own doubt. The one who says they don't give a fuck what people think, they're likely obsessed with them. The one who goes on about how happy they always are, they're likely haunted by sadness. The lover who claims not to be jealous, ever? Irony is probably eating them alive every day. Why exaggeration? Because the reality is too frightening to acknowledge. So the ego doesn't murmur, it shouts. Pay attention to extremes. They're rarely accurate descriptions, they're overcorrections. They expose the very insecurity that anyone might seek to conceal. Look at social media, curated identities, endless highlight reels, perpetual thunder about success, wealth, happiness. Nietzsche knew this centuries before Instagram was a thing. He called it performance. And he knew that the more loudly someone performs, the more fragile they are inside. The person who will endlessly flood up your feed of these messages is usually the weakest. The one who can't stop sharing about joy is frequently the loneliest. Performance isn't power, it's desperation. It's this worry that if I stop dancing, I won't be seen. If I show the authentic me, I won't be loved. This is why Nietzsche considered performance not a manifestation of strength, but a plea for assistance. The more one has to keep proving something, the less one believes in it themselves. We like to think of ourselves as rational animals, that we arrive at our beliefs through reason, evidence, logic. Nietzsche tore this illusion apart. He realized that most beliefs aren't born of logic. They're born of wounds. The person who vehemently fights against independence, perhaps they've been abandoned and their philosophy is mere armor. The one grasping for control and order, perhaps they were raised in chaos and structure was their armor. The one who despises authority, maybe they were powerless and rebellion somehow equaled survival. People don't believe things because they are true. They believe because they cure. And then, only then, do they ornament them with logic. And so when someone argues with fervor, don't just wonder what is their standpoint. Question, what pain formed this belief? And that's the part where the real story is. Now you see why Nietzsche's truths draw blood so deeply, because after you learn to read fear, projection, exaggeration, and pain behind every word, everything changes. You stop asking, why is this person the way that they are? And then all of a sudden you, instead of answering, what are they running to? It's not just that the mean girl has a bully in the house. She has a wounded victim. The boss who micromanages is not just controlling, he or she is also afraid of losing control. The non-stop influencer performances online aren't just self-loving, they're love-starved. Nietzsche's takeaway, judgment turns into comprehension when you learn to perceive shadows. But there is still one level deeper, because if, on the one hand, masks protect us, on the other, shadows reveal our fears, then patterns betray our biography. In part 3, Nietzsche goads us in how to read the repeating scripts of people's lives, these unconscious cycles that confess more than any word could. Masks protect us, shadows reveal our fears, but there is something yet deeper that Nietzsche wanted us to attend to. Patterns. Because people don't just fail in moments. They don't project once, or exaggerate once, or perform once. They repeat themselves, over and over. If you want to truly understand another person, don't just listen to what they say. Don't merely pay attention to their silences, but watch their patterns. The habits of a man are the journal of his life. They speak the truth louder than any words ever could. And Nietzsche's ultimate truths lead us to that underworld, the repeating cycles of weakness, strength, envy, love, and fear that constitute human nature. Think of two people watching someone cry. The first scoffs, pathetic, grow up. The second shuts up and provides presence, not judgment. Which one is strong? Nietzsche's answer might surprise you. True strength isn't domination. It's not weakness being ground under your heel. True strength is restraint, being able to look at a vulnerability without making fun of it. The power to be kind when we'd be cruel. One who mocks the weak is in fear. They behold fragility and panic because they dare not isn't their own. But the one who fights back with patience, forgiveness, compassion, that's someone who has already fought their fight. Now they don't have to do toughness anymore, having fought for peace within themselves. The true test of power is not how you handle the strong, it's what you do to the delicate. Just scroll through social media and you see it everywhere. Performance without limits, the contrived self, the perpetual bid for attention. Why? Because one of the scariest things about being human is to feel unseen, to be forgotten, to move through the world without making a mark. That's why some people are perpetually drama-filled, not because they love turmoil, but because drama ensures that they will not be ignored. It's why others share too much about themselves online, not because they are self-assured, but because they are afraid of the silence. Nietzsche viewed this longing to be recognized as a sign of insecurity. If what you really think is, you said a bad thing, but now it doesn't matter because I revealed that it's bad, you're just stuck on requiring the crowd's cheer. Attention-seeking is rarely vanity. Most frequently it's a plea. Please notice me. Please don't forget me. It's a cruel irony. The more you seek attention, the less real self you have. And the more it's inauthentic, the more afraid they are of disappearing entirely. A cycle without end. Few things are deadlier than envy because it always refuses to say its own name. People virtually never say, "I envy you." Instead, they mask it as criticism. The office colleague who sneers at another's promotion? Envy. The friend who belittles the happiness of another's relationship? Envy. The one who makes fun of someone's beauty or talent? Envy. Nietzsche understood envy to be unvoiced admiration, an unconscious desire. It means, I want what you have, but I don't believe I can have it. So it masks itself as contempt. It's why attacks are so often compliments in backhanded disguise. The critic isn't talking to you. They're admitting what they secretly want for themselves. The wise do not respond to envy with anger. They regard it for what it is, a confession. Consider this. Do people actually choose who they are? Nietzsche had a grimmer suggestion. A great deal of who you are is not a conscious decision. It's the refrain of childhood, playing on and on and on. The neglected child grows up to be the adult who overtalks, constantly interrupting others in a desperate attempt to be noticed. It is the child who is reprimanded for errors who becomes the perfectionist, the one who fears failure. The child who received love only for pleasing becomes the adult who overgives, no matter the cost. We believe that we're basing our beliefs on evidence, but much of the time we're basing them on wounds. This is why Nietzsche also admonished us to read biography, not just philosophy. People's philosophies are, for the most part, excuses, rationalizations of the roles that they had imposed upon them when they were children. If you want to know how someone is today, turn to the evolutionary mirror. If you want to know who a person is, check out that person's past. That child is still alive within, pulling their strings. But one step can be deceiving. But repetition never lies. The friend who pulls a ghost on every relationship that comes close? That's not random, that's fear of intimacy ticking like a clock. Or the coworker who overdoes it until he or she keels over. That's not dedication. It's self-worth tethered to productivity. The flirt who never commits? That's not a charm, it's a confessional. I am afraid of being trapped. Nietzsche's intuition, the habits of a people are their truth. You just want them to say, yes, I'm indeed afraid. Their behavior is the confession. The cycle is the diary. The pattern is the mask sliding back over and over until you understand. They're showing you what they fear, even if they don't know it themselves. And finally, Nietzsche's last truth. Initially, such insights would appear to be about reading other people, on learning to see through masks, discern shadows, and recognize patterns. But if you stop here, you have missed the larger point. For the more you look out at others, the more you are bound to reflect back on yourself. The mask you wear, the shadows you project, the fears driving your actions, the roles from childhood you can never escape. Nietzsche wasn't merely providing you with tools for reading the world. He was providing you with a mirror. Know others is to know yourself. And that is to know another is to know yourself. And that is the most difficult reading of all. So what do you do after you have seen clearly? It's like a curse at first. Because you can never judge people at first glance anymore. You see the fissures, the projections, the unendurable performances, the laughter that hides loneliness, the confidence that hides fear, the cruelty that hides envy. Gradually, however, that curse morphs into a blessing. Because once you see straight, you don't judge. You stop resenting. You stop being fooled. You begin to understand. You begin to connect. And most of all, you start to wake up to yourself. Nietzsche didn't want us to turn into manipulators, puppeteers pulling the strings from behind the curtain. That was never the point. His real message was far more threatening, to see human beings as they really are, not as they imagine themselves to be, and not as we wish they were. Each mask represents a story of survival. Every shadow is a wound. Every pattern is a confession. And if you have the courage to look, truly look, you won't only see others more clearly, you'll finally see yourself. That is the blessing and the curse of waking up. And once you see, you cannot unsee. By now you have walked through Nietzsche's 18 truths, and the question is not, do they apply to others? The only question is, which ones apply to me? Because the person I struggle to read the most is always the one looking back at me in the mirror.